Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Parent Pivot Podcast. I'm Steve Cummings.
And I'm Julia Cummings.
Hey, we have a special guest with us today and things. Let me get to it.
Yes, very excited.
She is an author and speaker. She is passionate about encouraging families. And she's the author and co-author of 18 books, including No More Perfect Moms, No More Perfect Kids. And her most recent release with her husband, Mark, was No More Perfect Marriages. She's been on Focus on the Family, Crosswalk.com, Family of Today, and those are broadcasts that I used to work on and stuff like that. And she's also been in Today's Christian Woman magazine. Jill Savage is the founder of Hearts at Home. I'm sure we're going to hear more about what that's all about. And been an organization that has encouraged moms since 1994. And she and her husband have 5 kids and 6 grandchildren, and they live in Normal, Illinois. Jill Savage, welcome to the Parent Pivot Podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. As before we came on, I was telling you, I read your book and just, it's so much of everything that we talk about all the time.
And the book you're referring to is Empty Nest, Full Life, Discovering God's Best for Your Need by Jill Savage. That's one of her 18.
Yes.
We have yet to write one, and she's already got 18.
I know.
It's like people just
She's been a busy woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has been a little crazy. That would be for sure.
So you wrote this book 5 years ago, and I'm curious, because 5 years ago, you were probably in a different place than you are even today. So in the 5 years, what do we need to know that has changed in your world with the empty nest world? Anything?
That's a great question. I really don't feel like, I feel like I live out the principles in that book more and more and more, right? Because my kids are 5 years older and they have 5 more years of their own struggles and mistakes. And, my principles like pray, don't say, and different principles like that I teach in the book, I use all the time, because we just have 5 more years of experience under us. But I would say the other piece that maybe is even bigger for me is so one of the things I talk about in Empty Nest, Full Life is, in the book of Ecclesiastes, it says that there's in everything there's a season, a time to a time to hold on, a time to let go. Well, I build the book around that, right? So the first part are the things that we need to let go of, and the second part are the things we need to hold on to. I think in the last 5 years, the things that I need to hold on to, like identifying what my passion is in this season of life, being excited. I think, honestly, I just turned 60 in February. And I honestly feel like my 60s are like, there's just so much possibility in this season of life. And so if there's anything that's like bigger for me in the last 5 years, it's like recognizing that this is such a unique, beautiful, positive season of life. And I want to use it to the fullest.
Yes. Amen, sister.
Okay. Yeah.
You're a baby. We're older than you.
Not by much. Not by
so
much.
How long have you guys been empty nesters?
Technically, how many years has it been? 10.
Yeah, of the 4 married kids, the oldest got married. They celebrated 11 years this past June.
Okay.
The other 3 got married within 5 months of each other during the pandemic. So they're all celebrating their 4th wedding anniversaries this year. We had one in May, one here in August a few weeks ago, and then the 4th one is in October and things. So we're not technically empty nesters. We have an adult child living with us and her husband and their little 6.5-month-old little girl. So we're loving just having a grandchild just nearby and being able to watch her and stuff like that. But we still have the boundaries of the privacy and stuff like that. We're still empty nesters.
We did that for a little while too. I say they have bungee cords. Some of them have bungee cords on them, right? And so we did that. 2 of our daughters, our 2 daughters, both lived with us with their families for a season of time when they were in transition. And I'm glad that we could offer that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one thing we've talked about before in our podcast, that it's one thing when you have an adult child, whether they're single or have come back after college, or they're getting in their late 20s and 30s, and they're just not getting out of the basement and getting a job, and you're kind of enabling them. It's another thing when your kids are working really hard to make it in their careers, and the world has just made it hard for them to rent or own a home. And we said, we've got extra space. Come stay here. So that's the space we're in with.
And one of the things I was going to tell you where our lives parallel each other so much is we also, you talk about this in your book, had an Airbnb. That was one of the things that we chose to do in our empty nesting that you talk about. That we did Airbnb for a while, and then those guys moved in, so we stopped doing that. The other thing is our podcast that we have started here. That is another empty nest thing that we have done. Steve started a 501c3 ministry in his empty nest.
Yeah, we have plenty to keep us going.
Yeah.
We're not looking for stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that you talk about all that stuff. If I take you back in time, so I asked you about the last 5 years, but if I take you back in time when you started your empty nesting, can you tell us about any personal experiences or emotion? You talk about emotional roller coasters in your book. Is there something that you can point to, a story or something that you can share that that most of us can probably relate with?
Yeah. You mean like when I had a full-on breakdown in the cereal aisle when I realized I wasn't going to have to ever buy my son cereal again?
Something like that.
One of those. Yeah. Totally. Well, one of the things I share is that it's interesting because I came I began launching kids. We had a 13-year, almost 14 years between our oldest and our youngest. So, when I'm launching our daughter at the age of 18, she still has, we have a 6-year-old at home. So it took a long time for the nest to empty. Right. And so by the time, my friend, Kathy, Lip says that when it comes to the empty nest, you're either a boo-hooer or a woo-hooer. And and I was definitely, by the time our youngest was leaving home, I was a woo-hooer because I was like, okay, I'm like ready for this,
Finally, we're there.
He left the nest. He actually graduated from college and got married in December. And so it was kind of mid-year, finished out the year. And so I'm heading into the new year with like this real excitement. And it wasn't until 8 months later, when we were in August and school was starting, that it hit me hard. Like I was just out there having a good old time thinking, okay, looky, I have freedom and there's so much possibility. And by this time, the older kids have grandkids. So I'm a grandma and all of that. And then school starts and all of a sudden I realize I don't have anybody to move into a dorm room. I don't have anybody to buy back to school supplies for. And I felt left out. Like I felt the loss in a huge way, but it was delayed because it was associated with that part of the year that I loved as a mother. And so that's part of the reason that I think that there's such a roller coaster of emotions is that, there is an excitement for many of us. But then it hits different parts of the year, different things going on. Like, I even thought about it. The school musical was going on and I had been at every school musical at the high school for like 10 years. And it was like, I should be going to that, but I didn't have I didn't know anybody who was on the stage but it was just this loss. Somebody once said it's like a forced retirement. And I'm like, I can see that, And so I think for me, that's why it was, and I think that the grief is also layered. The grief is, you've got the grief of the kids being gone. You've got the grief of a season of life that you maybe loved, and it's not going to be the same. We have sometimes the grief associated with decisions our kids are making. So I think that also contributes to that roller coaster as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hey, can I ask this? I know a lot of this coming from your perspective really helps out moms, but can you share anything about what your husband also went through during those years and stuff like that from a dad's perspective?
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's so interesting because I would say that in general, the empty nest transition is harder for moms than it is for dads in general.
Yeah.
However, there's some dads out there that have struggled, and maybe the mom is woohooing and the dad is boohooing. So I think hey, whatever it is for you, it is. And let's be okay with that. Let's honor that in the other person's experience. Let's honor the other person's experience. I would say in general, Mark didn't struggle with it. He didn't have I would say the depth of emotions that I did. I think he was more just kind of rolling along and going, hey, this is an exciting new season of life. And, we did have this one situation that happened as our youngest son was going to college. It was funny because he was getting ready to go to school, and my husband, so I've been an author and a speaker for 25 years, 30 years. And so I traveled for speaking. I would go to women's retreats, women's church events, that kind of thing. So Mark was always the one at home. He was taking care of the kids, and that was just our agreement of how that would work. And so our youngest son was getting ready to go to college, and I had like 3 huge trips coming up. I had to speak in Pennsylvania. I had a couple of radio interviews or TV interviews in Canada. I had another speaking engagement in Michigan. And so I was starting to, do them like usual. And all of a sudden one day I looked at him and I said, wait a minute. Our son is going to college, and you don't have to be at home anymore. And he was like, oh my gosh, I don't. And so, he had some vacation time. He was a pastor at the time, and he had some vacation time. And I said, what would you think if we did something a little bit different here? And you came with me, and we turned this into a big road trip. And he was like, we could.
Can we do that? We can do that. Wow.
And so we did. We ended up, instead of me taking 3 different flights we just did this big road trip, and we went around and we went through Niagara Falls and up into Canada, and then came down through Michigan and hit all of the places I needed to speak or do interviews. And we had so much fun. So I think that was an eye-opening experience for both of us to go, ooh, what do we have ahead of us? What are the possibilities?
Yeah. That's
Very
awesome.
Fun.
So a lot of folks that listen to the Parent Pivot podcast, they're kind of in that stage of, hey, our kids are starting to launch. And so they're struggling with this idea of their kids leaving home. What kind of counsel would you give them when they're like going, I don't know about this? Yeah. What's the top couple things? I mean, we know because we read your book.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, first, I think we look at it through a lens of loss more than a lens of gain. And I would encourage, it's okay. I don't want you to deny, and I don't want you to not grieve what you need to grieve, right? But let's balance it out with what is in front of you. There is freedom in front of you. Yeah. When your kids launch, you get a raise because your money no longer has to be divided 3 ways or 4 ways or 5 ways, or in our case, 8 ways. It's only divided 2 ways between my husband and I. And so you get a raise. You get to know these wonderful human beings that you brought into this world now as adults. There's the possibility of grandkids. So there's so much in front of you. And so let's look at it through both. And the lens of, the lens of loss, let's honor that, let's grieve it, but let's balance it with the lens of gain and all the possibilities that are out there.
It's almost like looking at that cup. Is it half full or is it half empty?
And I think that a lot of times we only see it as half empty. I'm over especially, and this is where I think it's harder for moms, especially if it's a mom who poured herself into raising her family. So
her identity's wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
Right. Because the husband, he continues working the job. And if there's a mom that maybe she did work all the way through raising her kids, maybe it can be less stressful for her because she still does have that part of her that isn't changing. But that mom who poured everything in, man, she really struggles because she's like, who am I now? I don't know what I do. I don't know what I like. A lot of women don't know what they like. And I will tell them, what you have to begin to do is start trying things. And a lot of couples, they lose themselves also because everything has been so child-centered and their connecting point. So a lot of times that first year or two after the kids leave, you've got to start doing some experimenting again. You've got to start doing some experimenting on things, what you like, things that you enjoy doing together, trying them out. And, I discovered I love flowers. I flower garden now. And I love doing that. And I love, like right now, I have fresh flowers in all the rooms in my house because I have this huge flower garden and I love to share it. But I didn't know I enjoyed that until I tried it a couple years after my youngest son left. And I went, this brought me a lot of joy.
Yeah, that's really similar to me enjoying NASCAR since we moved to the South. I'm an empty nester, and NASCAR's popular here, and I have a friend who's taught me all about it, and I'm introducing Julia's oldest brother, taking him to the race in a couple of weeks. So there you go.
And
Garden, NASCAR.
I don't understand it at all. I do not understand it. But we together, we took up kayaking, and we kayaked together, and that's fun.
Yes, we put our kayaks in the lake, and we enjoy doing that. And we enjoy going down to the beach, too. So that's always been part of that.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's really neat.
So let me ask you, I want to ask you, you use the phrase in your book, lovingly detaching. Is that how you say it?
Lovingly detaching.
So can you explain what that is?
Yeah. Well, that is specific to when our kids have struggles, and they will have struggles. They don't all launch and just soar. Some of them launch and bounce and struggle. And so what we have to sometimes do, especially when we have a child that is really struggling, is, and in order to not enable them, we have to lovingly detach. And so what we're doing is we're not detaching from them as a person, but we are detaching from their problems. And that's the key, is we become enablers when we try to be the one that solves their problems for them.
Right.
And then that doesn't help because it keeps them from believing in themselves. It keeps them from figuring it out. It believes them in believing that they can get to the other side of it. It keeps them depending on you. And so we really have to lovingly detach from their struggles. And this one's been a hard one for us. We have a son that has a lot of mental health issues. And that's where I first learned the concept, because it's actually a concept that was created in the environment, the addiction environment, that when somebody has an addiction, you have to learn how to lovingly detach. So you're not detaching from the person, you're detaching from the problem. The problem is not yours. It is not yours to solve. And it is not yours to fix. And so that is where I first learned it from. And that has been really helpful for us as we have had to watch our son struggle in a million different ways. And it doesn't mean that we don't help him on occasion. But helping is when you assist someone with something they can't do. Enabling is when you assist someone with something they can do.
Amen. Say that again. That's very clear to hear. Say that again.
So helping is when you assist someone with something they can't do. But enabling is helping someone with something they can do.
Amen. Man, that's a podcast all right.
That is, in fact, I mean, as I read the book, I'm sitting there going, okay, we could do a podcast on each I mean, on not every paragraph, on each subject.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. If I were to say the word expectations, what would you say about expectations in this phase? And this phase obviously goes on and on and on. I mean, it's not just when the kids are 18 to 22 or 22 to 25. It is forever.
It is.
So,
oh my gosh. I think that expectations get us in trouble as empty nest parents more than anything else.
Yep.
It really does.
It's like I love you and I have a wonderful plan for your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And exactly. That's a great way to put it. And so I think that we have got to change our expectations about so many different things. You know, I'll tell you one of the best places to start is with the holidays, because if you keep expecting the holidays to look the way they have for the last 20 years or however long it's been, you're in for a huge disappointment. Because you're not allowing your child and to figure out what they want the holidays to look like in their life or their family as if they begin to have a family. And so we have to get to a place where we go, okay, things are different now. I have to let go of my expectations. And I'm a firm believer of giving our kids the gift of holiday freedom. And what does that mean? It means that we are very flexible with the holidays. Mark and I have now spent many Thanksgivings alone, just the two of us, nobody here. And that's because maybe the family's going to gather on Saturday. And so therefore we're just home by ourselves on Thursday when it feels like the rest of the world is gathering with their family, but we've just had to change that expectation to go, no, that's okay. The day doesn't matter. And I think the other part of expectation is I can't expect that my kids will be there. Yeah. They get to choose what works for their life. So if they need to travel to the other side of extended family if they're married and they need to go to their spouse's side, and that is a distance, it may mean they can't come home for the holidays. And I have to be okay with that. No guilt trip. Invitation without expectation is one of the most beautiful things that we can give our kids, especially at the holidays. Invitation without expectation. And if they can't come, gosh, I'm going to miss you, but I totally understand. And I totally want to honor that.
No, we devoted a whole podcast to that. But you said it. You said it really well. It's like they need to make their own decision for what works for them and their family. And as our kids have had their own kids, now they've decided, well, we want to have our own special Christmas before we join the rest of the family. We're like, great, go do it. Whatever that takes, whatever you guys decide. And we're good with flexing on that.
And we've got a situation where we've got 3 children on the other side of the country and only one here. So, we always have to work that out and be willing to be the ones to go somewhere and to, so
that Christmas this year might be a destination location.
Yeah, we're thinking about just us going to some tough place.
You know what? You totally can. And we kind of have that, the opposite. So 4 of our 5 are here in Central Illinois. And then we have one son that's in Australia. And
Wow.
he's been in Australia for 6 years. And so last Christmas, no, was it last Christmas? No, 2 Christmases ago, we went there for Christmas. And so we did early with all the kids here. And then I think it was on December 20th, we hopped on a plane and we spent Christmas in Australia with our son in his neck of the woods, in his, you know, and I think that's the other thing is when you do have a child that lives a distance, it's really valuable that you enter into their world, that you get to know their people. Right. And so I love that we've now been to Australia twice to spend time with him. And I know his friends. I know his neighbors. I know his partner's family. I know all of that. And I am so grateful that we can talk about those things. And because there's a familiarity in that. And so I think that, you know, and that connects me to another hobby I got into, and that's something called travel hacking. So we did not have the income for Mark and I to go to Australia. So I started learning about travel hacking, which is where you travel on points. And that's another hobby for me. And so I travel hack. In fact, the last time we went to Australia, I think we paid $125 each for our flights. And then we did a home exchange, and it cost us all of like $200 for 14 days of housing while we were there.
Wow.
So
that's
another
amazing.
empty nest hobby came out of that.
Yes, you know, I've done a little reading. There's a book that I kind of got like a $12 book or whatever online. And for whatever reason, I can't seem to get myself through it. And every time I look at it, I go, why have I not done this yet? I need to get on this shtick. And because, you know, having your kids live elsewhere, it's a huge income drainer of just because we also help them fly out here because they can't afford it. And we really want them to be able to come and visit us. And so, that would be, I'm glad you brought that up. I literally, because so many people, I talk about it all the time with my audience, and so many people are like, how do you do that? So I did a little 2-hour, $47 course. It's available on my website. So there you go. If you want to do that, it's called my Travel Hacking 101. That's really fun. That's great. Okay. I want to try another word. What about the word guilt?
We all deal with it. Oh my gosh. Because we got like, oh, I wish I would have handled this situation better. Or when my kids did X, I wish I would have known. And so I would say we all deal with it. But B, we cannot let it rob our joy. And we can't let it feed shame. Shame says there's something wrong with us. We're defective. Right. And so we don't want to do that. So what I like to say is, let's give ourselves the grace of growth. And the reason why I say that is if I was actively parenting now, I would handle situations different than I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So right now I have the benefit of the growth of a 60-year-old woman, right? That I didn't have when I was a 40-year-old woman and had a house full of children. And so I think it is natural that we will look back with a little bit of regret or some guilt. But that's where we have to give ourselves the grace of growth to go, you know what? I did the best I could with the knowledge and the experience I had at that time. Let ourselves off of the hook.
Yeah. I think the average believer has a hard time. We can give others grace, but we have a hard time giving ourselves grace. And that's where, like you just said, Jill, is like, you know what, I did the best I could with what I knew. I mean, I look back, in fact, something reminded me, I was flying to Bangkok, and was watching a movie, and this dad just laid into his son. And that triggered me for a time when I did that with our youngest. And I had this moment of grief.
Yes.
Going, oh, wow. And part of me went, gosh, I wish I hadn't done that. But you know what? In that stage, in that moment, it came out, and I did apologize for it at that time. But yeah, you have to give yourself grace, because the life is too short to not give yourself grace, and appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a piece of that is how you see your child as an adult struggle. Oftentimes we can see where we might have contributed to that in some way. And that becomes just something that can sit heavily on you. You say in your book at one point, you talk about that grace is freedom. And I love that. I made a little note of it. Grace equals freedom for us. And so when we give ourselves or our child grace, we are creating freedom in our own emotional being, but also in our relationships. We're allowing healing. We're allowing growth. We're allowing just a better situation.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And here's the other thing that I think is important. There is nothing that we have done that God can't redeem in our child's life.
Amen.
Yeah.
He is the Redeemer. And so there's nothing so bad that we did that he can't redeem that in their life. And so I think if that brings some balance to it as well.
Yeah. So I have a question. We've done a few podcasts. I'm a recovering type A personality. I'm getting better. And we've had some podcasts to that because, again, this goes to a couple of different words. We've already kind of touched on it, but you're talking to the parent who can tend to be maybe more helicopterish, controlling, overbearing. Kind of go with that one. Like, how do you help that parent, launch well and whatever not? Because again, there's so many things wrapped up in that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, here's the hard part too. You've controlled their world for 20 years, 18, 22, whatever you've controlled their world. You've called the shots. It's really difficult to disentangle yourself from that. Right.
And you're going from being the pilot in the plane to go sit in the back.
Exactly. And so, first, let's just recognize how difficult that is. But second is, man, this is where my statement that I share about in the book, and that's pray, don't say, is that there's going to be moments where you're watching the kids make decisions and you're just like, oh, that's going to hurt. That's really going to hurt. Oh my gosh. I don't think I can watch, I mean, it's, there's moments like that. And our tendency is to want to speak up, but as a recovering helicopter, type A, helicopter parent myself, my husband says I'm not type A. I says I'm type AAA. And so, that is a place where I literally have to imagine myself handing off the responsibility to God. Like, this is not yours anymore, Jill. This is not yours. And unless they ask, if they ask, by all means, share. Yeah. But if they don't ask, then you talk to the Lord about it. You don't talk to them about it, because that's not your place anymore.
Right. And that's been the premise of our podcast. How do we help parents pivot from that parenting, instructional, we're raising responsible adults, to now we're stepping back, and Julie had read the book by Jim Burns, Doing Life with Your Adult Children.
Keep the welcome mat out, and we keep your mouth shut and the welcome.
And we interviewed Jim on that. He's a good friend of mine and things like that. So that's always been our premise. Would you rather be in relationship or would you rather be right?
Because you didn't read the whole book, you don't realize she says these exact words. She says the Keep Shut Club.
Yep.
You talk about being in relationship over being right as well.
So we give another book to point people to. Yep.
Yeah.
We have another books to point people to. We'll put in our show notes all of Jill's books, and then I can go find and read those as well.
Yeah.
I love it. I love Jim's book as well. I was just on Jim's podcast just last week, and yeah, I love his book, and but yeah, that Keep It Shut Club, so very important. You know, and it's hard. I sometimes say that I am biting my tongue so much that it's like bleeding, like, you know,
yes,
because
I have half a tongue.
Yes. And if we don't understand that, if you don't begin to understand, because so let's look at it from another angle. So when my, you know, I have a close relationship with both of my daughters, and I've had conversations with them over the years, different conversations where they've said like, you know, so-and-so doesn't really want her mom to come after the baby's born because it's too stressful. Mm-hmm. And I get, you know, because I spend a lot of time with empty nest moms, I get my daughter doesn't let me have the grandchildren, or my daughter doesn't do this, or my son's, mm-hmm. you know, and it's like, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes it's because they don't belong to the Keep It Shut Club, or they believe, you know, in fact, I remember one time I was getting ready to visit my daughter when her baby came early. So we had a plan. The baby was going to be born and I was going to come. Well, baby came way early, and we lived in Illinois. They were in Texas. And mm-hmm. Erica said, Mom, I really would rather you wait and come after we get home from the hospital. And so I was like, okay, I will do that. And and baby was early. So baby was in NICU, and mm-hmm, that was so hard, you know? And, but anyway, at church the next Sunday, I had somebody walk up to me and they said, oh, I saw Erica had the baby. Are you headed to Texas this week? And I said, actually, no, Erica asked me to wait until they got home. And then she said, and I'll never forget this, she said, well, doesn't she know it's grandma's prerogative to come and see that baby?
Yeah.
And, you know, that like stuck in my head. In fact, I came home and wrote a blog post about it. And I was like, there is no grandma's prerogative. There is no grandma's prerogative. And, but when somebody operates out of that, that's where the kids put boundaries in place.
Right. Because that's where relationships get fractured.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And so, it was like, no, that's, you know, and I have to do that even with the grandkids. When the grandkids are around, they'll say, you know, they're at my house and they'll say, Nana, can I do this? And if their parents are here, I will say, you need to ask your mom, because that's not my choice when mom is here. Now it is if I'm the only one here, but, it's like, we have to learn to defer in so many different ways. And a lot of times when deferment doesn't happen, that's when broken relationships happen.
Right. And it's really easy to sit there and say, hey, remember when you were the parent and you brought your kids and your parents were there? How would you be feeling if that happened? It's like you're invading sacred territory because you're not giving them the chance to raise their own family the way they see fit. And even times then it's kind of like, okay, this isn't how we would handle, you know, the grandchild, you know, doing what they're doing, but they're not my kids, they're your kids, and you're doing it differently. And I'm going to need to be a part of the Shut Up Club.
Yeah. And, you know, I know one young mom I was talking to, and her mother honors their bedtimes when they watch the kids, and the other grandparent doesn't. And so they no longer let the kids stay overnight with the other grandparent. And then that other grandparent is like, you know, oh my, you know, what? They keep the kids away from me. Well, it's like, you're doing that to yourself. You're doing that by not honoring the request that they have for a bedtime.
Yeah. And I know for some grandparents, that's really hard because you think that it's your job to spoil. And to some degree, that definitely goes on. But if my child is telling me, you know what, we're not giving her sugar right now until she's this age or whatever, I am certainly not going to be the one to give her sugar.
Yeah.
That's not my job. That's theirs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did you have another question?
Well, no, I wanted to ask her, I think the interesting part, and I did read some of this, so I do get credit for reading the chapter, but what really struck my interest, Jill, was the part in your book where you share that empty nest exposes idols. Talk about that, would you? How does empty nest expose idols?
Yeah. Well, I think that when we put the responsibility of our kids to make us feel good about ourselves, it's an idol. Mm-hmm. So it can be an idol of identity. So if my kids are making good decisions, I look good and I feel good about myself. If my kids are walking with Jesus, I look good and I feel good about myself. But if my kids aren't walking with Jesus, or if they're not making good decisions, I feel like it is a poor reflection on me. Right. And then that's where the passive aggressive comments come out sometimes. That's where we make comments where we should have just kept our mouth shut, because our identity is wrapped up in them, and that is an idol. Like we've put their behavior and their choices on the altar to worship it. And it's like, man, that gets us in trouble every single time.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of idols in the empty nest season. Worry is an idol because worry is the worship of our circumstances. That's what worry is. And so we put so much focus on the mountain instead of the mountain mover. And so that's how we cycle in worry, control, when we try to control their actions with our comments or our instruction when they're past the instruction stage. All of that plays into when we have to start recognizing some idols, some places where we are worshiping things that in the place of worshiping the God who can do something about those things. The Holy Spirit is very capable without our help. Yes. By the way.
Yes. Yes.
Fully agree. And, I can just speak to my own story, how God brought my idols to the surface, which I really didn't want to know. It's like, because it took a trauma in our lives for me to realize I had put my family on a pedestal. I had put my marriage on a pedestal. I had put what our family looked like as a whole on a pedestal. And God just kind of came along and said, Julia, I'm going to have to help you with this. You got to look at this. And, my world fell apart for a while. And so just bringing that back to life, and me having to realize, first, Jesus is my bridegroom. He's not. Jesus is. Jesus is the one that's going to fulfill my life on any level. And then to take off the pressure of just needing everything to look good. Like when you are a family in your church, and we stayed at the same church in Southern California for 30 years. And so, we were known. We did all the leadership things. We taught marriage classes. We taught parenting classes. We did it all. And so you start allowing that to feed your identity. Yeah. And that was the issue. That's the issue, because it just had to all be wiped away.
Yeah, I would just add, we can tend to, as believers, believe it or not, we can tend to get full of ourselves. Absolutely. Because we want to tell God how things are supposed to play out. Yep. And we want to tell him how this is supposed to work. And God kind of just very patiently sits back and goes, oh, really? And I just had this conversation with a church planter. I just came back from Bangkok. I work for City to City, and we were doing a intensive in the Asia Pacific region. And I was just talking to this young couple, and they were all excited about what they heard. They wanted to go back to their country and plant this church. I said, remember though, God's more interested in what he's going to do in you than through you. He doesn't need our help for what's going on in this world. So if we can have that spirit of humility and owning our stuff in front of everybody and who we need to, and having that heart of just loving the person well in front of us, and especially our adult kids, then life will go a whole lot easier than us trying to go, but it's not matching my expectations. We've talked about that because we've got these idols in the way that we don't realize we have. And the sooner you can get to that space and that trajectory, your sanctification journey is going to take a turn, and you're going to go from a boohoo to a woohoo.
It's so true. It is so well. And you just touched on something that I also think is important. I think the church at times does us a bit of a disservice in that there's this message, it may not be spoken, but it's implied. If you do X and you do Y, you will get the result of Z.
Yep.
And let me tell you, when your kids leave the house, they now make their own choices. They now make their own decisions about faith and how they're going to live their life and what they're going to watch. And you can do X and you can do Y.
Right.
And you do have a greater probability that Z will happen. But it may be H and J and L and E and F squared. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you don't know. And so I think that that's another place where our expectations get set up. Like, and that's where parents go, I didn't raise you that way. And it's like, we certainly want them to know true north, but they may wander when they get into their adult years. And if they already know where true north is, it's easier for them to return to true north. And so what we want that for sure. And we pray for that. Right. But there's no assurance that they will stick with true north just because they were raised that way.
Right. We even had a couple of our kids, born and raised in the church, and you do everything right, and from nursery school through high school, and they get off to college. And now it's time for them to make their faith their own. And I remember being across the street with our youngest, and he was having some struggles with his faith. And I said, great. I actually entertained it. I said, that's awesome that you're questioning your faith. You see those buildings across the street there? Go ask those professors, because I've done my job as dad. Now go talk to another voice. And so he needed more deeper answers. And, he realized I know why I believe what I believe. And our daughter had some similar stuff going on too. So the best thing you can do is to release them and saying, God's got them, not me. So anytime I've found myself saying, if then, you're in trouble if you open your mouth and you use a statement where he says, well, if and then you're setting yourself up for an expectation failure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So one more topic that I want to cover is marriage and what marriage holds, and you call it 2.0 in your book, what marriage holds in the future, or in this season, which is now and the future. But also I wanted to ask you about, well, maybe you'll get there. You know what? I'll go back to that, because you've got some retreats that you do. So at the end, let's talk about those.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear about all the different retreats. You've got the Empty Nestful Life. It sounds like you do some intensives with marriages and la.
Yeah.
So let's talk about all of that. But go into the marriage thing.
Well, I think that a lot of times empty nest couples are surprised by what happens marriage-wise after the kids leave, because oftentimes it's like they thought things were okay and they thought things were good, but it was the kids that were connecting them. Like they were only finding connection around the kids' activities. That's very common. Because, you're sitting at ball games together, school musicals together, you're just living life. And then all of a sudden they're off doing their own thing. And now you're kind of looking at each other going, ooh, who are you? I don't quite know who you are. And what do we even enjoy? We're so different. Oh my gosh, we're so different. And so definitely we experienced that. Our marriage went through a terrible crisis, actually, 12 years ago. I do talk about that very openly in the book. We also talk about that very openly in our No More Perfect Marriages book as well. My husband went through a midlife crisis, and in the midst of that, really walked away from everything that he knew, had an affair. It was a dark year. And we got to the other side of that. I never felt like our marriage was over. I believed that I needed to stand for our marriage, and I did. And I'm so grateful because now we have the marriage we both always wanted. And we now help other couples find their 2.0 marriage. And so a lot of times you do have to recreate marriage in the empty nest years. Hopefully you don't have to recreate it like we had to after such a horrible crisis. But even if you do, I want you to know it's possible. But you often do have to find what you enjoy together. What's the right amount of togetherness and individuality in the relationship? You have to figure all of that out. And one of the most important things you can do is to create some connecting rhythms in your empty nest marriage. So that can be, a date night. I think as you're raising kids, we think of a date night as the purpose is, to get away just the two of you. And so then you're like, well, it's just the two of us all the time. Why would we need a date night? Well, you need a time that's away from the house, that is doing some things, laughing together, having a good time, exploring the world together. You need to do those things. And sometimes you have to figure out what they are. And one of the first things we started doing in our empty nest years is something we call adventure dining. And adventure dining is we just would go find a restaurant. Once a week, we'd go find a restaurant that we'd never been at before. And so it was always an adventure. Sometimes we sit outside and go, does this look safe? But, we seriously was like, let's just explore where we live. Right. Yeah. And so we still need to do those kinds of things in the empty nest season of life. So yeah, we actually have a marriage membership, community. It's called the Date Night Community. We have a lot of empty nest couples that belong to Date Night. It allows them to have little mini videos to watch, and remind them of marriage principles that keeps their marriage strong. But even more than that, we have over 50 different date nights. They are themed date nights. So that's a really fun resource that we offer as, just to help couples keep the spice in their marriage and keep growing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that. So tell us about all of your retreats and things.
Yeah. So Mark and I have a marriage seminar that we often do in churches all over the U.S. and literally all over the world. We've had opportunity to do it multiple places in the world. It's called the No More Perfect Marriages Seminar. So anytime that's offered, we have a speaking schedule on our website so people can find out where we will be speaking at. And then we have our Marriage 2.0 intensives as well. You mentioned that earlier. And that's where a couple who is either in a dry place in their marriage or they are in crisis and feeling like they're maybe roommates, and they come to our home. We work with only one couple at a time. They come to our home. We work with them Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we also offer 4 and 5 day retreats. So if they do that, then obviously it's Friday through Monday or Tuesday. And we absolutely love helping couples in 3 days. It's about a year's worth of marriage coaching because we stay in the zone. We dig into things. We help them understand why they're getting frustrated, why they get stuck. So we love doing our Marriage 2.0 intensives. And then I have an empty nest mom retreat. And that is actually coming up at the end of September. September 27th through the 29th. It's in Indiana, but I have women coming from, I think right now, 20 different states. So they fly into Chicago and then drive over to, it's about an hour's drive from the Chicago airports in Indiana. And so we still have some availability for the Empty Nest Mom Retreat. And then probably in the future, we have done in the past an Empty Nest Marriage Retreat, and we'll probably do another one in the future. So a great way is just get yourself on our email list, and then you'll know when those kind of things become available. And you can do that at jillsavage.org/subscribe. And that kind of gets you connected. The Empty Nest Retreat, you can learn more at emptynestbook.com.
There we go. And we'll put that in our show notes as well. So if you missed that, we'll make sure you're connected well there and things like that. So
you guys have a lot going on in your empty nest.
And actually that's stuff that we've dreamt about doing and things. So we're kind of, waiting to see when we'll launch that stuff too.
We'll see if God takes us down that path. Yeah. That's the part we don't really know.
Julie's got her own therapy practice that she does. And I've got men that I meet with to help them live out their identity as beloved sons. A lot of us men, we stay stuck in our heads. We don't know what it means to get into our hearts. And so we can express feelings. And really, when you ask for help, that's a sign of strength, not weakness. So we kind of blow all those lies of masculinity out of the water. And guys are staying together. They're really connected, and it's been super helpful and things. So I'm enjoying that. So we don't know what God has for that, but it has been a super pleasure having you on our podcast, Jill Savage. Folks, if you want to get a hold of us or any way, you know how to get a hold of us at parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com. And we're going to be back with another interview coming up soon. So be looking on Tuesdays for the next Parent Pivot podcast. And Jill, thank you for being a part of this podcast. And we hope people will just enjoy reading your books. Again, the book we talked with Jill about today is called Empty Nest Full Life, Discovering God's Best for Your Next by Jill Savage. And she's author of 17 other books. So we will put that book in our show notes, and you can go Google her at Amazon and find those other 17 books and stuff. So Jill, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. And we'll see the rest of you on the next Parent Pivot podcast. Bye-bye.